It felt less like comedy and more like a public judgment. Her delivery was smooth, every pause felt planned, and every punchline hit hard like a perfect uppercut, making the crowd roar. But under the laughter, there was a sharp edge. People knew the joke wasn't just funny, it was true. From the start, Johansson made it clear she wasn't going to avoid the obvious. She showed Harry and Meghan not as misunderstood ex-royals dealing with a cruel world, but as self-made celebrities, living off a never-ending victim story. The opening set the mood. Netflix's favorite ex-royals had become full-time complainers. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. The audience didn't just laugh, they exploded with laughter. It was the kind of laugh people give when the truth has been sitting in front of them and someone finally says it out loud. Then came the sharper hits. Meghan, she said, could turn a royal wedding into a 3-season drama about trauma. It was cruel, yes, but also clearly showed how tired the public was of their constant stories. That fairy tale wedding, once seen as a fresh chapter for the royals, had become the setting for documentaries, podcasts, and interviews, all saying the same thing: how badly they'd been treated. Johansson didn't need to lie. She just shined a light on what was obvious. The hardest hit in the monologue wasn't about crowns or palace drama. It was about taking responsibility. She made a joke about Meghan's homemade bath salt recipe that was shown on a Netflix show now involved in a lawsuit. After a woman reportedly had serious burns, there was no polite wording or softening. Johansson called it exactly what it was and left the audience shocked, but laughing. NBC showed every second without bleeping anything, ignoring reports that Meghan's team had asked to approve mentions beforehand. For Meghan and Harry, this wasn't just bad PR, it was a total loss of control. For years, they carefully managed how they were seen, deciding when and how people could talk about them. Now, the story had slipped out of their hands, and late-night comedy was leading the conversation. When satire stops being scared of backlash, it shows that public opinion has changed. Johansson's performance tapped into something bigger than a 4-minute TV bit. It showed a shift that had been building for years. After the Talal interviews, the huge deals, and Harry's memoir that felt like an unfiltered therapy diary, people's feelings had changed. Where there was once sympathy, now there was exhaustion. The couple's complaints had gone from big news to predictable parts of a story. People felt they'd already heard too many times. The real sting came from how widespread the laughter felt. It wasn't just the usual anti-Sussex people agreeing. It was a broad, across-the-board mockery showing that their image had cracked everywhere. In Hollywood, that matters. When top comedians roast you with no consequences, the industry pays attention. Producers, agents, and executives watch how audiences react. And here, the reaction was obvious. No one was defending them. By the end of the monologue, Johansson had done more than tell jokes. She had publicly broken apart the carefully built image that had protected Harry and Meghan since leaving the royal family. The applause wasn't just for her timing. It was for the freedom to finally laugh at two people who had been treated as untouchable for so long. The effect didn't just spread on social media. It hit the private spaces where reputations are measured in profit potential. In the days after, Hollywood insiders started sharing the clip like a test. At QA and WME, two huge talent agencies, executives reportedly watched the audience's reaction over and over. The laughter wasn't polite or forced. It was loud approval. One senior agent was direct: if Scarlett could make those jokes and get cheers, then anyone could. That alone was bad news for the Sussexes, because it meant the end of an unspoken Hollywood rule. For years, even if you didn't like them, you kept your criticisms vague and your jokes soft. Now that protection was gone. The industry's will to protect them wasn't just fading, it had flipped completely. Working with them was starting to feel risky. Quiet whispers started going around. They were box office poison. Not in the sense of a bad movie, but in the sense of bringing the wrong kind of attention. Scarlett's roast also embarrassed their friends. The jokes didn't just hit the couple, they also mocked the media figures, celebrities, and companies who stood by them in every controversy. Suddenly, defending Harry and Meghan looked less like loyalty and more like helping in the wrongdoing. In Hollywood, that's deadly. No one wants to be the last person supporting someone when the public turns. Netflix felt the hit the most. The company had spent millions on the Sussex brand, hoping their royal image would bring prestige content. But in reality, their projects had gone from big cultural moments to small gossip topics. Viewer numbers spiked on release, but then dropped fast, and critics openly made fun of them. Scarlett's joke about living in a $14 million mansion wasn't just a gag. It summed up a complaint Netflix bosses had been hearing privately. The couple's story had gone from inspiring to spoiled. Arkewell, their charity brand, didn't escape either. Johansson's joke about it sounding like a spa for egos was brutal because it felt true. Public records showed the foundation spent far more on PR than on real charity. What was supposed to be their moral core now looked like a vanity project. Forbes joined in days later, asking what Arkewell had actually done since starting. The fact that a comedy bit could spark serious news coverage showed the couple had lost control of the story. Even their personal connections were fading. People close to Beyoncé's team said there was no ongoing business with Meghan, despite Meghan's past attempts to use their brief public meetings for credibility. Other famous friends stayed silent, and that silence said a lot. When Hollywood turns on you, friends disappear. Inside Arkewell's offices, panic grew. Staff knew being made fun of was one thing, but having those jokes work for all types of audiences was another. Late-night comedy was no longer a small threat. It was a sign of exactly where the public mood was heading. And here, the mood was strongly against them. Scarlett hadn't just told a few jokes. She had shifted the power. Harry and Meghan were no longer in control of how they were talked about, and in an industry built on image, that's deadly. The hardest hit came when jokes started pointing out things the couple didn't want people to know. One of the most remembered lines mocked Prince Harry's living situation and citizenship. Johansson said it with a smirk. A man who wrote a book, trashing his family, moved to California, enjoys life in America, but hasn't applied for citizenship. The meaning was clear. He wanted benefits without responsibilities. Law experts picked it up fast, pointing out that his visa, taxes, and possible diplomatic perks had long been unclear. The joke turned a vague issue into a big talking point. Beyond comedy. For Meghan, the bath salt lawsuit joke hit just as hard. It wasn't just for laughs. It attacked her image as a lifestyle expert. Here was a duchess turned wellness promoter accused of pushing something tied to serious injuries. The fact the recipe was on her Netflix show made it harder to ignore. Scarlett didn't make it up. She just turned it into a sharp line that stripped away the polish and showed the mess. The bigger effect was that it ruined their control over how their charity, projects, and choices were seen. Their foundation's tax reports were suddenly trending online. People who never cared about financial reports were sharing proof that Arkewell spent more on PR than charity. The ego detox joke became a short way of describing what critics called their whole operation, a shiny cover with little behind it. In the media world, this wasn't seen as just a celebrity drama. It was a moment of exposure. Comedy had done what opinion pieces and investigations couldn't, made the criticism fun, easy to remember, and easy to share. You didn't have to be into royal gossip to get the joke. It was clear, broad, and damaging. The backlash didn't come as angry protests. It came as silence. Calls went unanswered. Invites stopped coming. Meetings with partners were put off. Forever PR experts call this the social cold shoulder. It's worse than an attack because it cuts off attention. Without public supporters, the Sussex brand looked less like a powerful couple and more like a problem. The entertainment world's reaction made the change permanent. People who once thought they were safe bets started seeing them as risky. If Scarlett's jokes worked this well, any future project could be overshadowed by mockery. In showbiz, where image is everything, working with someone who makes people roll their eyes is a risk most won't take. What made this so damaging was that it didn't use secrets or scandals. It was all public information. Their own actions, words, and money records. Scarlett just put the pieces together to show the picture they wanted hidden. By the time the clip stopped going viral, the message was clear. The jokes weren't random shots, they were the public's judgment. And in the court of public opinion, Harry and Meghan weren't leaving with sympathy. They were leaving as the joke. Their brand was damaged not by a political attack or tabloid lie, but by 4 minutes of fearless comedy that told the truth too well.